Hey, happy Sunday, everybody. There we go. All right. So the view from my side is South Mountain in Phoenix, and we've got blue sky and fluffy white clouds. So hope you're having an equally good day. I'm jumping in here to answer some questions that as I've scrolled through, I've recently seen on different videos. And so the best way to collectively make sure that they're seen is just to give them all here. So, number one of the questions was, and I will tell you in context where this came from, is why do I hold the weights when I have a pair of dumbbell? The question is, why do I hold the weights at an angle? For instance, if I was lying down on a bench or on the floor, why do I hold those weights at an angle as opposed to parallel or to in alignment? So the weights would be totally in alignment here. So here's the answer to that question. For ease of stress on the shoulders. So if we can minimize the stress and still optimize the results, I'm going to do that for you and for me every single time. So it is always for me, and especially over 40 for any adult, we want to weigh risk reward ratio really carefully. And there is no decline of reward, and the risk yet goes down. So so if you were doing, say, a chest press, imagine that you're doing a chest press with a barbell. So you've got a really long barbell, it's coming across, and you're doing that. You have to have those hands in this parallel position, if you will, or kind of mirroring one another. Not as ideal for your shoulders because there's only one place for it to go. And often, the parts in your shoulder are already pretty vulnerable. By the time we're 40, often what I learned I would hear over and over and over again, and so far, almost a 40-year career, is that knees or shoulders for an older adult over 40, let's call that really midlife, were first to go, first concerns. So with our shoulder joint, you've got a top part and then you've got this ball and socket. And the two of those pieces actually can run into each other. I mean, there's no place else to go. And if that's happening while you're exercising, you're trying to force it, often we're causing stresses. Many of you know shoulder issues can turn into rotator cuff problems. So why wouldn't we want to avoid that? So my preference, even when I've had a bar in a gym or I've had a bar in my home to use, will almost always be to pick up a pair of dumbbells because I can then bring my elbows in. About 45 degrees is optimal because I then reduce stress in my shoulder. I actually get a bigger play in my triceps. So I don't know too many women who wouldn't like more toned triceps, right? So even if you're toned and you're fairly lean, we kind of get that second wave goodbye as estrogen goes down and we've got skin that isn't quite as firm. It's related to that as well as that creates the visibility of cellulite. And it was always there, but we can see it a little bit more. And the skin quality that we have because of collagen production being down is also contributing to that. So we see that second wave goodbye. But when you bring your weights down here, you're not only still getting great chest work, and sometimes you're getting different fibers than you would if you were up here, but you're also involving your triceps and you're removing shoulders from the stress. So that's really the biggest reason. Now, occasionally I will do it way in here and keep it narrow and do a chest press this way. You'll get even much more greater stimulation of the triceps, but varying it is good. What I don't do with dumbbells is just repeat the same mistake. So I don't bring them up and out here. This is not ideal. You want to bring them back here. And then I'm going to turn to the side. So when you're pushing, so you're pressing and doing the literal press, when you come back, just because you could come back if you're lying on a bench or a ball, doesn't mean you should. So again, this way back here with weight in your hand especially stresses what we call this acromion process. It's the anterior part of your shoulder. So where you want to stop is here. Two benefits. We don't get the stress on the shoulder, so we take the risk out of it. And what has to happen is your triceps decelerate that action. And when you're right here in this small pause, you're getting more tricep interaction along with the chest work that we want anyway. So win, win, win. It's all super beneficial. So another question was, isn't weight training boring? So many times, and I'm not going to do a persuasive argument for you here about the reasons to strength train, but ideally as we age, we've got, in our 30s, we can get away with doing a little bit more cardiovascular exercise than we might be strength training, but we should still be doing it. And in our 40s, that's less true. 50s, even less true. In 60s and 70s, if you are not strength training by now, you've lost a significant chunk of your muscle and of your bone density, and there's no other way to get that back. You may not be able to regain it, but you can now stop losses and you can gain some of it. We now know, and we used to think in 1995, I used to think that science, the best science we had at the time, was that all we could do with exercise is stop losses. We weren't going to regain. We now know that if you change some lifestyle habits, if you're eating more protein, if you're removing things from your diet that cause leaky gut and problems absorbing all the nutrients that you need, not just calcium, but vitamin D and magnesium, in order to give you good health, if your gut is in good shape and you're doing the protein and the stimulation through exercise that you need to, you're actually able to gain bone mass. And we never knew that was possible. The how to, and how do we keep things from being boring, right, is really the question. You've got to strength train in order to get the muscle and the bone that you want for longevity, to live independently. It's just a requirement. You may think, I don't want that muscle, but you do. So your 80-year-old self is going to thank you for starting now. You don't want to wait until you're 80. We do know people can do that. We've seen studies of 90-year-olds confined to wheelchairs who begin strength training, who do get stronger. They create more strength. It's a little bit harder when you're in that 10th decade of life to gain lean muscle tissue, but you could probably still do that now if you're in your 50s and or your 60s. So how do you keep it from being boring? Well, there are basic exercises, so I will have to give you that. The basic exercises that you're going to do are restrained by, you only have so many movements of your shoulder or of your hip joint or your knee joint. So we squats and lunges and chest press and rows, pulls, all of those things you're going to see over and over again. But the way you make it more magical, more fun, is we change the sequence that we do those exercises. We change whether we do them 2 at a time, back and forth. We do them 3 at a time, or we do them in the circuit. What you want to be sure that you're doing is not doing variety for variety's sake. So you're not just throwing in exercises that, oh, this will shake it up and this will make it different. Because if it doesn't have purpose, you're still not going to stick with it. Even though it's crazy full of variety, probably you're going to risk injury to a greater extent than you would if you were following the basics. And I'll tell you what's exciting. Progress. Progress is exciting. Seeing muscle tone, feeling stronger, being able to do daily activities of life easier, so you have more energy left over to do the fun things that you really want to do. That gets exciting, not so boring. So once you start, and if you can stick with it for a few weeks, I think you'll feel very differently about it. There's no other way for me to convince you to do it than to have you just start. Just try it. Try to commit. Use discipline if you need to for 3 weeks, and then tell me, how do you feel about having done that on a regular basis, twice weekly, for about 45 minutes is all it takes. So hopefully that helps. So someone else asked this question, and this is such a common question. It is, how do I do more cardio so that I can lose weight first, lose the fat weight, so that then I can start doing the strength training? So there's a couple things in here. There's a limiting belief. Number one, you actually don't want to just think cardio is the way to lose weight, because as we age, again, 40s, 50s, 60s, each decade it accelerates. We're losing more muscle. That is causing you to lose a metabolism. So if you want to speed your metabolism up, so you're burning more calories, expending more energy, burning fat around the clock, even sitting here, you want strength training so that you can increase your lean muscle tissue. And the what we call the afterburn of calories and energy expenditure that happens either after a walk, say, or after high intensity interval training, or after strength training. If I asked you which one of those was the best or the biggest, hopefully you pick strength training, because that is the truth. So if you do a strength training workout, you're going to be in about, or for about 24 hours in this point or place of higher oxygen consumption, because your oxygen is trying to repair and replenish lean muscle tissue, to use and put back the deficit that you created with the oxygen that you were using to facilitate the exercise and increase circulation. So while your body is kind of working overtime to put you all back together and help you recover, that takes more energy. So during that period of time, it's far greater than compared to high intensity interval training, and definitely than compared to a walk. Now, both of these other two types of activities, they have value for you, but it's not better or more value than strength training. Now, here's a question that I don't have in the lineup, but I'm going to answer this one because it is a frequent one, and I just got it the other day, and that is, if strength training is good and I'm strength training 4 days a week instead of 2, wouldn't that be better? And the answer is no, emphatically and absolutely no. So what we forget quite often is that the place where you get more fit is when you're recovering from the exercise. So you may do strength training on Monday and on Thursday, as you should. About 72 hours between is best, or optimal at least. But the fitness doesn't happen on Monday. It doesn't happen on Thursday. You're getting fit as you recover on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, or you're getting fit as you recover on Tuesday and Wednesday between. And likewise, from Thursday to Monday, it's Friday and Saturday and Sunday when you're recovering. As long as you're getting good rest, like sleep, ultimately, you're getting adequate calories, you're getting plenty of protein in order to repair those muscles, and you're not depriving yourself of calories. Because if you are, your body first goes to two places. The reserves in your bone pulls from that, and it breaks down muscle to get the proteins and the amino acids to do every other function that it has. As we age, we're already losing muscle 3 to 8% every decade after the age of 30. So do math. What if it was the worst? 8, and we're, say you're almost 60, right? So in our after 30, so that's that decade, 40 to 50 and 50 to 60. For 3 decades times 8, 24% of the muscle mass you had, you no longer have. Now, I painted that the worst possible picture, right? So if we said 3% each decade, 9%, you've lost 9% of your muscle. That's also 9% of your metabolism. Muscle is your only metabolically active tissue, meaning the only tissue that helps you burn calories, burn fat. So if you lose the muscle, you lose the metabolism. Now, a study that came out, published in 2021, so very recently, showed that metabolism doesn't slow with menopause. It doesn't. It actually holds steady from about 20 to 60. Most women hit menopause at 51.3. Now, everybody's different. Some happen to do that earlier, some later, but on the average. So it's really key that we realize only in the United States do people put on weight, in fat weight, during menopause. Other places in the world, they don't. So there's a big piece of it that is related to our lifestyle, how we rest, how we vacation, how we move, and how we eat. So a lot of the toxins that we're exposed to, because we've automated everything, we have so many EMFs that we're exposed to, in the furniture, the carpet, the upholstery that we have, and in the toxins that we may or may not be using to clean our homes, to put on our skin, lotion, makeup, all of those things potentially are toxic. And we have more toxins that we have endured during our lives than other generations have. And hopefully then our children will, because we're improving it, we're realizing what contribution they've had. So all of those pieces come into play in regards to we need lean muscle. We have to do everything possible that we can. And strength training is the number one priority for women over 40 for sure, men as well. They don't lose it as quickly or dramatically as we do, but by about 60, we even out and we're losing bone and muscle at about the same rate. So the risk to them is also significant. So I'm going to answer these two questions. It says, little Annie D, does strength training and resistance training mean the same thing? It does. That's a great question. So resistance training is kind of the big overarching umbrella. When I say strength training, I'm referring to with weights, with external dumbbells or barbells or machine weights. If you're doing that, there are a lot of things that fall under the umbrella of resistance training. So using bands and tubing, your body weight, or using tools like suspension training, otherwise brand name known as TRX. Those also fall under resistance training. Here's the reason why you don't see me using those very much, if at all, here. Number one, body weight training is very limited. So unless you can do pull-ups, what you're doing is probably a push-up for your chest. And we're already tight in the anterior part of our shoulders and through our chest because of our postures here. And because now we're doing so much of this, we have forward head hang, we have rounded shoulders passively stretched just because we have poor posture. We're in here. We don't need more tight pushing things. We actually need more pulling types of activities. So doing body weight makes it impossible for those of you who can't do a pull up or, an otherwise pull up straight up. Those kinds of things are far more beneficial to the balance in your postural muscles and to counteract that activity or posture of daily living. So you don't see me do that. Tubing and bands, and I've used a lot of that during my career, early on especially, or at the end of fitness classes, or working with older adults. But most of the time when it was an option and I was working with an older adult group, I would have them use their soup cans or their very small weights as opposed to bands, because the property of elastic bands is very variable, meaning, we can pull it and there's a sweet spot. And then at the very beginning, it's way too easy, but at the very end, it's way too hard. Think about your muscle. So if I hold this up in the middle, where I said the band, there's a sweet spot, and that's great. In the middle, we already have the muscle development. It is at the attachment, the beginning and the end, or the origin and insertion of muscle, where we really need the integrity around our joints. So if you're using band, and especially not just only for the very old population, they're not optimal for allowing them to have the strength in the place where they need it most. So it's why you don't see me using bands or tubing a lot, if at all. And I will generally only use them if someone is at home and recovering, doing some rehabilitative workout. There are one or two instances where that's different. I might have somebody wear bands and move side to side to strengthen the hip joint and the muscle surrounding the hip. But that's it. So hopefully that helps. The TRX, not to throw TRX under the bus, but and it's got a place, but it's very difficult to have good form. So you are literally suspended. But imagine if you wouldn't even think about doing gymnastics, the rings event, right? Because of all the stabilization that you have to do around your shoulder. Essentially, that's what you're doing with a TRX. Now you can stand more upright, meaning you put less weight on your chest, but then the muscles are not getting the stimulus they need, while the joints are potentially put under stress they don't need. So it's not the ideal marriage, certainly for a beginner. So hopefully that helps. In any, oh, I thought there was a second question. Said, I'm learning so much from you. It's really helpful. So glad. All right, we're going to keep it short. So have a great rest of your Sunday, everybody. And I would love to come back. And so if you've got specific questions, you've seen videos here on the channel, and you're looking for something specifically or an answer to a question that you've got, I'd love for you to just put it here below. And don't forget to subscribe. And if you would share this, I would so appreciate it. So thank you. Have a great day.